Yes, it's in fact 11:34 Beijing time in Kashgar, which means it's
9:34.
Yeah, it's about it's about 8:34. Okay, because Kashgar, Urumqi is about 2 hours behind Beijing time. Kashgar is more west, so we're like 3 hours behind Beijing time.
I know you've explained this.
Yeah,
but do it again. Why?
So China runs one time zone on the Beijing time. This is in order for the train schedule to remain consistent throughout the country. But we are right now in the city of Kashgar, which is geographically closer to Baghdad than it is to Beijing. So we're like almost 3 time zones removed. So if it's 11:35 in Beijing, and it's really only 8:35 here because the sun just came up and it's very nice.
It's very complicated.
Yeah, very.
Because whenever you ask anybody anything to do with the time, you have to double check. Is it Beijing time?
In Xinjiang, yes.
Yes.
If you're in Xinjiang, you just but we'll just keep it consistent. Beijing time, one China. This is one China policy, one time zone.
It's Chinese time with socialist characteristics.
Yes, yes.
We are in Kashgar, and there is a statue of Chairman Mao that's here, which you said has significance. But not just that, today is also quite an important day.
Today is a national day in China, which celebrates the founding of the People's Republic of China on October 1st, 1949, when Chairman Mao ascended the Tiananmen Gate and announced Chinese people have stood up. The People's Republic of China is now formally founded. So now we're in year 2025. So it's been, 70... shit, I have to do math.
well, it's 70 years this week since Xinjiang became autonomous.
It's 70. Yeah. So that happened in 1955. So we just add 6 years to that. So 76. Today is the 76th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China.
You are such a terrible stereotype of a Chinese guy. You're supposed to be good at maths.
I'm trying to break the stereotype.
And why is the Mao statue significant here?
Well, actually, because Mao, every Chinese city used to have a lot of Mao statues, but many of them have come down since the end of Cultural Revolution. So I grew up on the campus of Chongqing University because my dad was a lecturer at Chongqing University. And I remember when I first arrived in Chongqing University for my elementary school, I started at my elementary school there in 1982. There was still a giant Mao statue in the middle of the square. But before my first year of elementary school is over, that Mao statue got pulled down. And so Kashgar is one of the few Chinese cities that still has a Mao statue.
So we are going to hopefully go and find it.
Mm-hmm. I already found it on a map. It's 25 minutes walk from here.
All right, so it's not far.
Yeah.
So we can find it with ease, and hopefully it's close enough for us to actually get to.
Yeah, it's 25 minutes walk.
No, I mean the physical statue. They haven't.
Right. So I don't know. I have never been to Kashgar before, so this will be a adventure for both of us. In the old days, you should just walk right under the statue, but because today is National Day and also the 70th anniversary of the founding of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, there might be additional security measure. We don't know yet. We'll find out when we get there.
So Mao is probably one of the most interesting historical figures in the world. I mean, he's right up there alongside Stalin and Hitler. And just like Hitler and possibly even Stalin, there's a huge amount of misunderstanding, particularly in the West.
Often in the West, Mao, Stalin, Hitler, they're often juxtaposed together, but they're three very different people. So for Mao, he was born in 1895, the year when China was defeated in the First Sino-Japanese War. It was a quite shocking event. at the time because for thousands of years China was a preeminent power in East Asia, and Japan was like the student. China was Sifu, the master, but now the student have defeated the master, and it sent shockwaves through kind of the Chinese elite. They realized, okay, we have to do something different now. Whatever has worked before, Confucianism, all that, is not working. We have to adjust to the times. And the time was when all different Western imperial powers was in China, jostling for power, carving up a sphere of influence. And Mao, Mao, by the time he was 18, the Chinese Revolution happened in 1911. Did I do my math right? More or less. Okay, maybe he wasn't born in 1895. Maybe he was born in 1885. But anyway, I have to check.
This issue with maths is a recurring theme, yeah.
I went to Caltech. I graduated from Caltech, just so people know. and in any case, so when 1911 rolled around, Chinese Revolution happened that overthrew 1,000-year-old monarchy in China. The emperor is gone. So at the time, Mao was, I believe he was 18. And he actually joined the revolution as his province of Hunan declared independence from the Qing Empire. But the revolution was quickly over because at the time, it resulted in a compromised truce. What happened was the Qing Imperial Army, they sent General Yuan Sikai to suppress the rebellion. But Yuan Sikai had his own ideas. So he negotiated with the revolutionaries, say, okay, how about I will just make the Qing Emperor abdicate, but you have to make me the president. So that deal was reached, and Yuan Sikai went back to Beijing and said, sorry, Chao Emperor, you have to vacate your thrones. And he became the first president of the Republic of China. When Mao was 18 years old, he celebrated this as, this big change in China. But very soon, Mao, like many young people at the time, realized nothing has really changed. The emperor is gone, but nothing else has changed much. China remained very poor, very weak, continued to be bullied by other foreign powers, particularly in the World War I. So during World War I, the Allied side wanted to drag China into the war against the Axis power, against Germany and Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and what they wanted is not necessarily have China to send military to Europe, but what they wanted is Chinese men to work in the European factories, because at that time a lot of European men has been sent to the front, and they needed literally men to man the factories. And so the deal was the U.S. President Woodrow Wilson told the Chinese government at the time, if China joins the war on the Allied side and sends these Chinese labor to work in Europe, we will give you the German colony of Qingdao in China. Because Germany has occupied this city in Qingdao on the east coast of China for a while now. They say, okay, we'll give that back to you as a price for joining the Allied side. And so China sent up 250,000 men to Europe to man factories in France. But when the Treaty of Versailles was signed, there was a secret deal worked between the United States and the Empire of Japan to give the German colony of Qingdao to Japan. When that news was announced, the Chinese public felt betrayed, right? Because up to that point, many have looked up to the United States as a model of democracy, and people wish to model the Chinese society on the United States. And a lot of young people, especially Mao, they saw that that they need to look for a different model of development. And it's right around the same time October Revolution happened in Russia.
When the Tsar was killed. Yes.
So a lot of Chinese youth thought, okay, the Western liberalism is not the way to go. Maybe Bolshevism, maybe Marxism is the other path, is the alternative path. So in 1921, Mao and a group of other people, they went to Shanghai to meet a Soviet agent from the Comintern to officially form the Communist Party of China.
We saw, didn't we see the headquarters, or the original headquarters in Shanghai?
The original meeting place in Shanghai.
Place, yes, sorry.
Yeah, so for people like Mao, young people in China at that time, their primary goal was actually nationalism. What they wanted was for China no longer to be weak. They wanted to strengthen China, and they're looking for different ways. So they experiment, and at that time there was a lot of experimentation in China. You know, people tried anarchism, you know, Marxism. You know, some even flirted with fascism, you know, nationalism, all kind of isms. And for Mao and his comrades, they decide to try the Marxism as a path to save China, to strengthen China. So that led to the founding of the Communist Party of China in 1921 on French concession in Shanghai. And where do you want to go with this? So I'm just giving you a history right now.
Yeah, but continue. It's good.
So for Mao, you know, up to this point, I think his primary motivation is still nationalism. You know, for hundreds of years.
So, like, he wanted to basically restore, perhaps
make China great again. Yes, because because China had been the preeminent power in East Asia for millennium, but he fell on really hard time in what's now known as the Century of Humiliation, starting from the First Opium War in 1839. And
so what? This was around the 1920s, 1930s.
Yeah. So 1920s is when Mao, they formed the Communist Party of China. And then they receive a strong backer, of course, from Soviet Union, because for the Soviet, at that time, Soviet Union still was trying to export revolution all over the world. And later, in couple of years later, Soviet decided to try a different approach, because you know, at the birth of Soviet Union, they were besieged by the Western power in the Allied intervention in the Russian Civil War. And so the Soviet government wanted to break their diplomatic isolation. So what they try to do is try to support national liberation movement all around the world, kind of as an anti-colonial movement. So they supported Ataturk in Turkey, for example, and they decide to throw because the Communist Party of China is really small at that time. It's just like small cell of some young people like Mao. So they throw their support behind Chinese revolutionary Sun Yat-sen. So Sun Yat-sen was a leader of the Chinese Revolution back in 1911 to overthrow the monarchy. But by 1921, 10 years later, he also saw nothing was working, because the government was dominated by different warlords. On the ground, warlords rule different regions of China. They collect taxes. They have their own army. They fight with each other. And Sun Yat-sen decided to form his own party called the Nationalist Party of China, or KMT, you know, as an English acronym. And the Soviet advisor offered him a deal he couldn't refuse. He said, we'll fund you with weapons, arms, whatever you need, and we'll support your government. But with the condition that you got to form a coalition government with the Communist Party of China. You have to welcome them into your ranks. But for Sun Yat-sen, that's not a problem, because his main goal is to get rid of the warlords, unify China. And the Soviets then went to, they say, okay, you know what your problem is? Your problem is you don't have an army. So we will build you an army. So Soviet advisor helped Sun Yat-sen found the Whampoa Military Academy in Guangzhou. And the communists and the nationalists worked together to train a new army that will unify China. The new army's commander will be Sun Yat-sen's protege, a guy named Chiang Kai-shek. But the director of the Whampoa Military Academy is a communist leader, Zhou Enlai, who will later become the premier of China in 1949. And everything was hunky-dory until Sun Yat-sen passed away in 1925, and Chiang Kai-shek consolidated his power through his control of the military. And then in 1927, they launched the Northern Expedition against the Chinese warlords in the north from Guangzhou, which is near Hong Kong. And they marched across China. When the army was approaching Shanghai, Zhou Enlai snuck into Shanghai to organize all the trade unions to stage a uprising, a rebellion against the warlord's government in Shanghai, and they were able to take over the city of Shanghai, and the warlord's army fled. And that actually alarmed Chiang Kai-shek as the leader of the nationalist army. He saw the power of the communists in organizing the leftist unions and all that to take over one of the largest cities in China. And he always had the suspicion that communists' ultimate goal is like complete takeover. And so he decided to strike out preemptively. This started the Shanghai Massacre in 1927. He worked with the Shanghai Mafia, the Green Gang, to kill 5,000 union members, communist sympathizers, etc. So that led to the break with the KMT and the Communist Party. But the KMT army went down, they keep on pushing north, so eventually all the northern Chinese warlords, they all bent their knee and pledged allegiance to the KMT government. So Chiang Kai-shek became nominally at least the leader of China. While Mao at that time, he went to hiding in the countryside, where he led a peasant rebellion. And then they marched into a mountain called Jinggangshan in southern China, where he founded the first rural communist base in China, in Jiangxi. And then for the next, so this was like 1927, 1928-ish. So for the next 7-8 years, Chiang Kai-shek tried to send different extermination campaigns to try to wipe out these rural communist base. And one thing that Mao did was he innovated upon the Soviet system. So in the Soviet system, you would have a commander and a commissar, right? But Mao felt that was not enough. You need to have a commissar even at the company level. So Mao famously said, the power comes from the barrel of a gun, but the party must control the gun. So that's why he put a commissar is a member of the Communist Party who will assist and sometimes take over from the commander. So he put a commissar at every company level. But in the mid 1930s, there's a lot of rural communist base in China. So the Soviets sent a German guy, Otto Braun, to act as their envoy representative. And somehow because he came from the Soviet Union, he had a lot of power. He sort of kind of took over, like Mao was kicked off to the side and they decided to adopt, he kind of took over kind of the military planning and everything, but it was a disaster. The nationalists, they also had on their side assistance from Nazi Germany, because Germany was after World War I, Germany was severely punished by the Allies. Yes. And so for the arms industry, it was like absolute the dark ages, except the only bright spot for the German arms manufacturer was China, because at that time, China was in the warlord period. Everybody needed guns. And so they sourced from Germany. And so the Chiang Kai-shek maintained that relationship with Germany all the way from Weimar's Republic all the way to Nazi Germany. And they were getting German advisors to train the Chinese army. And Chiang Kai-shek's German advisor was better than the communist German advisor. So they forced the communists to abandon their base in southern China to embark on the so-called Long March. At that time, the communists were just trying to flee. They didn't know where they were going. They were just wandering all the way across China, all through southern China. And in that process, Mao was able to reassert control. He said, like, okay, you guys screwed up. Nothing was working. And he had enough army supporters who supported Mao's rise to power. So Mao was affirmed to be the leader of the Communist Party of China during the Long March because of previous failure of the Soviet advisors. So and then Mao, one day he read in the newspaper that there was another nationalist extermination campaign of a communist base in northwest China, and he thought, oh, there's still a communist base left, so let's go there. And that led to all these remaining communist army survivors to march to North China base. And this is when the Chiang Kai-shek wanted to wage a final extermination campaign against the communists. But instead of, so at that time, Chiang Kai-shek was nominally the head of the government in China, but there's still many other warlords in China. So what Chiang Kai-shek wanted to do, he wanted to kill two birds with one stone. So he wanted the other Chinese warlords to go fight the communists for him, so to weaken both, and so he can take over. And one of the Chinese warlord he assigned this task is the Manchurian warlord Zhang Xueliang. Now, Zhang Xueliang was in control of all of Manchuria before 1931. And at that time, Chiang Kai-shek was fighting a war with other northern Chinese warlords. It's called the Central Plain Wars. Over 1 million people, 1 million troops were involved. And Zhang Xueliang, being one of the most powerful warlords, decided to throw his support behind Chiang Kai-shek. So he led the bulk of his army from Manchuria across the Great Wall to take over Beijing. And Japan took that opportunity, particularly the Japanese Guangdong Army officer took that opportunity to launch the Mukden incident in 1931 to take over Manchuria. So for Zhang Xueliang, he lost his home base, but he was being sustained by budget from the nationalist government of China. Chiang Kai-shek said, no problem, you can go fight the communists for me, I will still pay your army. But soon Zhang Xueliang felt that was a raw deal because his troops were keep on getting defeated by the communists, and he realized this was a ploy for Chiang Kai-shek to weaken him and the communists. So he plotted with the communists. By 1936, when Chiang Kai-shek arrived at the front line to inspect the final extermination campaign, Zhang Xueliang launched a coup. He had Chiang Kai-shek arrested, and he forced Chiang Kai-shek to sit down with the communists, where they agree they will form a coalition government to fight the Japanese. Because Zhang Xueliang's own army, they all want to go back home to Manchuria, which has been occupied by Japan. So this led to 1937, the full outbreak of war between China and Japan in the Marco Polo incident. And so but all throughout this time, Mao was building his base in northwest China, and when the full-on Japanese invasion of northern China happened, the Japanese army were very quickly to push away all the northern Chinese warlords that were no match for them. That created a huge power vacuum because Japanese were primarily interested in capturing big cities and establish control over the transportation lines like railroad in between them. They don't have much interest in the countryside. So that created a huge power vacuum in the Chinese countryside when the former control collapsed. So the communists took this opportunity. Mao sent his army to cross behind the enemy line in the occupied zone to establish communist rural bases in the Japanese occupied zone. And this would be crucial because the communists basically established a parallel government in the occupied area. So all these village head, during the daytime, they will have to answer to the Japanese and pay taxes. But at nighttime, the communists will come and collect taxes and dispensing justice. So that situation lasted throughout the war. And the result was the communists were able to gain control of much of northern China countryside by the time of Japanese surrender. Because by the time of Japanese surrender, Japan essentially only controlled the big cities and all the railroad linking them, but nothing in between. And this set the stage for later for the Chinese Civil War, when by the time of Japanese surrender, the communists already had 1 million men under they could already mobilize 1 million men in their military, whereas Chiang Kai-shek had about 4 million men.
I'm getting hot, and I think we need to check on our washing.
I agree. Okay, let's pause, hold on that thought, and we'll come back after.
We haven't done washing in days because we've been on the road.
Used to be like Kashgar Old City, and in fact in 2007 Hollywood made a film here, The Kite Runner, because the Kite Runner setting is Kabul, Afghanistan, and that world doesn't exist anymore, so they filmed it here in Kashgar, Xinjiang. But after 2007, after the movie Kite Runner was made, the Chinese government decided to demolish much of the old city and only preserve the important part, what they consider the important part. So that's what we're going to see today. We're going to see the remain of the Kashgar old city and see how they developed it. Because now it's a top tourist destination.
Which part of town?
Although, what is it? It's a fourth-tier city.
Kashgar itself is a fourth-tier city, but what we're gonna see is the heart of the old Kashgar town. And this city has been continuously inhabited for at least 2,000 years. So people just build on top of it, and we're gonna see what's remaining of it and what they have done it to make it accessible for tourism. Because we're tourists, that's what we do.
I'm not. Dude, I'm a local.
Yes, you are a local Tajik.
Wait. Just tell the story quick.
Okay, so we went through a lot of security checkpoints, and a lot of security checkpoints in Xinjiang, they just tell you to look straight into the camera, facial recognition camera, and then they tell you to buckle your safety belt and then they wave you out. Most cases.
In the car.
But when we get close to the border, because we went to the Tashkurgan Tajik Autonomous County, which borders Pakistan, Afghanistan, and what did I say? Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan. So there's a lot of border security. So we went through the border security. Same thing, our car would just get waved through. But our second car, which has Pepe and our Russian photographer stand on it, they always get stopped and get checked for passport. So we were puzzled for a while. Why is that the case? Until our driver has a very plausible explanation. And
sorry,
yeah. So the driver said they must have mistaken you, Jerm, as a local Tajik person. So that's why they just wave us through every time.
So these are my people.
You are among your people now.
I am among my people.
You are in a safe space.
This is Kashgar is for me a safe space.
Yes. At the Mao statue in People Square in Kashgar, and our original plan is to make a recording right underneath the Mao statue. There's only one technical difficulty. Right now, the Mao statue is very much exposed and it's very, very hot under the sun. When I walk over here, I find that there's a big blue sign on the steps. And in Chinese, the sign reads 游客止步, which means tourists, please stop here. So we cannot go up these steps. Here you go. It's one of the few remaining Mao statue in China.
This coffee's not very good. Why can Chinese people not get coffee right?
Well, see, for the Chinese, coffee is a Western concept. So maybe this is what they thought of Western products.
The statue of Mao is is there, but it's just too hot and it's in the
hot.
sun and you can't actually get to it.
Yeah.
I can't remember now where we left off.
We're up to the World War II. So how the
Yeah.
communists were able to build a lot of rural bases. Essentially, by the time of Japanese surrender, the communists control the northern China countryside. And then after the Japanese surrender, then the race is on to see who ultimately will control China. Because Japan had occupied a wide swath area of China. The nationalist government were pushed all the way to the southwestern corner. So for them to reach all the previously Japanese occupied cities, they had to rely on American help. So the Americans sent their Navy ships, their planes, tried to send the nationalist troops to those Japanese occupied cities as soon as possible. There's a race between the communist and nationalist forces to rush to those big cities that was occupied by Japanese to take the Japanese surrender. And in that process, Chinese Civil War got started. And eventually, to make the story short, communists won. Communists won, they control the country. So now Mao is ruling over a country of, at this time, roughly 500 million people. About 500 million people in 1949. So exactly 76 years ago. And
Which is six years after this province, Xinjiang. Sorry, 6 years before.
Before
Before it became autonomous.
Right. So the problem, China at that time was desperately poor. It's mostly rural. 80% of the people were illiterate because the literacy was very low. And after years of devastation, of civil war, Japanese invasion, it's just a desperately poor country. So Mao decided the top priority is that China need to industrialize. And he decided to do it by following the Soviet model. China is communist, Soviet is communist. So let's just copy the Soviet model, because at that time, as Soviet Union emerged out of World War II, it's, at least to the Chinese, it's a very, very powerful country. And, it's not an option to rely on U.S. anymore, because U.S. at the time was on the opposite end of the Cold War. And so, and they supported Chiang Kai-shek, who fled to Taiwan. So now the problem is how to do that, how to achieve industrialization. Now, unlike a lot of the European nations, and including America, where a lot of capital was accumulated by acquiring colonies and getting resources from elsewhere, China has no option. So the only way they can get the extra surplus to use as capital to invest in new industrialization will have to come from the countryside. Well, like as I mentioned, that time, China was primarily a rural country. So when communists tried to win the civil war against the nationalists, they had to adopt the strategy of land reform, because at the end of the Japanese surrender, everybody in China want peace. They don't want to fight a civil war. So how do you convince them? Say, hey, we gotta take the fight to the nationalist government, who's seen as legitimate government of China. So what the communists did is, okay, we will do land reform. We'll take away land from large landowners and landlords and redistribute the land to the peasants. Now, that was immensely popular strategy to mobilize popular support. Now, the interest of the poor and even middle-class farmers now are more aligned with the communists, because now they have a stake in the game. Because now if they side with the communists, they will receive land. And if the nationalists come back, they will lose all that land. So this is how the communists was able to win the civil war. Now, fast forward to 1950, the communists already won, but Mao decided, we can't just continue this path of subsistence economy for subsistence farming forever. We need to industrialize, and to do that, we need to collectivize our agriculture.
This is where the big moment in history begins.
Yes, so according to my grandpa, on my mother's side, who was a school principal at the time. He said the early 50s was actually pretty good. Early 50s, because the war has ended. The Japanese invasion was over. The Civil War ended. So the first few years of communist rule in the 1950s was pretty good. But then Mao decided, we're not moving fast enough. We gotta push for collectivization of agriculture.
And sorry, but the term collectivization of agriculture, we need to just quickly define that. What does that mean?
So the idea was that
it's basically the surplus of a whole variety of farms.
So after the redistribution of land in the communist land reform, most of the peasants already received their land, but because China had a large population, 500 million people, each family received a relatively small plot of land. So Mao's idea is, well, we can't have mechanized agriculture if you only have a small plot of land, right? So to make that possible, we must have all the peasants to pool their land all together into a commune. Then you can invest in machines, and you pull all your resources together. Then that's what I call collectivization. So instead of one individual farming family own this plot of land, or maybe like say 6 hectares of land. Now, if you have 100 families all pull their land together, now you have 600 hectares of land. Then you can possibly employ machinery to do the work. That's in theory, at least in theory. And they're following the Soviet model, because Soviet Union understood the collectivization back in the 1930s under Stalin.
Yeah, okay, but
Go ahead.
Did they know about what was going on in the Soviet Union? I mean, there was a great famine.
That is a good question, because in the 1930s, the communists in China were still busy fighting against the nationalists, or fighting for survival. And I don't know if they have the information, I don't know if the Soviet told them there was great famine as a result of collectivization. But what they saw in the 1950s was that Soviet Union was one of the 2 superpowers of the world. And that's what they want to emulate. They want to get to where Soviet Union was. In fact, in the early 50s, mid-50s, Mao put a slogan. He said, let's surpass Britain in 15 years and surpass United States in 30 years. He was talking about steel production, surpassing UK in steel production in 15 years, and then surpass American steel production in 30 years. Now, that actually did happen. Like maybe off by a year or 2, but actually that did happen eventually. But not through the Mao's method, in the early 50s, because Mao's answer was, okay, we'll just adopt the Soviet model. We collectivize, we make all the farmers pool their resources together, land together to form a commune, and the land will be public ownership, right? The whole village will own this land. But the problem with that is you kind of skew the incentive. Before, you're working for yourself. You are working for yourself and feeding your own family. And now this has all become public land and everything is public ownership. Who are you really working for?
The state.
Yes, you're working for the state. And that's not very strong motivation for average farmers, right? I mean, when they're working for yourself, the benefit is very tangible. If you work hard, you might get more surplus grain, and you sell and you get more wealthier, right? Whereas when you're working for the state, how does that work? And on top of that, the state was actually taking, they're mandating now all these farmers produce must be sold to the state. They monopolize the market. They got rid of the free market for rice. So one thing they push for is nationalization of industry as well in the cities. So all the previously private enterprise in Shanghai, they were all asked to be nationalized. So like now everything, the individual owners were asked to sell their factory to the state. So they will have the unions running the factory. But in fact, it's really having the state running. Everything becomes state-owned industries between 1955 to 1957, like a period of 32 years. And in the countryside, it's commune. All the peasants' land now got collectivized to form a commune, and you no longer have individual private land ownership. And a lot of the produce surplus from the countryside now that was extracted by the state mandating the farmers, all the communes have to send their food to the state, sell at a fixed price. So what's actually happening is the party was extracting the surplus value from the agriculture sector, and they're using that to invest in industrialization in the cities, because they had to being able to build factories, to buy machines from Soviet Union, and because, like I said, China didn't have colonies, China didn't go out to grab resources, so all that capital will have to come from somewhere. It doesn't come from thin air, and a lot of that was basically reaped by collectivized agriculture and force the farmers to sell their food to the state at fixed price. And essentially the state remove all the margins and use that to invest in the cities. So this is what happened. But this whole policy got little bit out of hand. What happened is, so in China, a top leader like Mao, he will say, okay, I think this is a good idea. I think communization is a good idea. And then what happened is the next level down, the next level communist official, they will try to overshoot the target. They'll try to do like, okay, if Mao says 5% growth is good, we'll try for 6-7%, right? And then the next level, at the county level, people, okay, let's go for 8%. That would look even better. And so each level, when you go down, they try to outdo themselves. So they know Mao thinks communization, collectivization is a good idea. Then let's report to say, because we collectivized, we had a greater harvest than we did previous year. But pretty soon it became a competition between like different provinces, different counties to compete who had better harvest. And a lot of these numbers were made up.
Okay, so they artificially inflated the numbers.
Yes. So appear to the central government, it seems like, oh, we had bumper harvest, and everybody is saying like this is because of collectivization. Now we are able to boost the agricultural output by like, I don't know, 200%. Which is completely bogus. You can't do that without using chemical fertilizer or something. And now, because the central government received the report that there's so many grain available, so, okay, well, we need this grain so we can export to Soviet Union to buy exchange for machinery, right? Makes sense. But then that's when the problem occurs, because there's not 200% bumper harvest. It was just a regular harvest, maybe a little bit more than before, but now you have to send the extra grain to the center. And that's where the problem occurs, because when they had to send the grain to the central government, they're taking away the reserve grains from the peasants.
To try and make up for that loss.
Exactly.
Which means that ultimately they were now digging into the sort of personal food.
Yes.
The personal supplies of food, which would have led to starvation.
Yeah. So this is exact, and the harvest, and also it was bad weather also, combined with bad weather in the year 1958. 1959, 1960. This is the period when Mao was pushing for collectivization. It was known as Great Leap Forward. The policy largely failed because they also pushed some ridiculous attempt. Like they were pushing, for example, the peasants to make steel in their backyard furnaces. And the way how are they going to make steel? They melt down their farm tools to try to make steel. But those backyard furnaces usually not very equipped to make real steel. So in the end, you just destroy your farm tools and you still have no steel. And so all these badly planned effort resulted in the Great Famine.
So hang on. All right. So Mao's policies led to millions, potentially millions.
Yes.
Or I say potentially tens of millions, because we
Yes.
don't know the exact numbers of
Yes.
people dying. Did Mao know about it?
Now this is a good question. I mean, eventually they did. Eventually, I mean, after 3 years, you can't hide the size of the famine. So
Because it's possible that in the first year he wouldn't have known.
right. So what happened was so actually this is interesting because even as early as 1958, 1959, there were already reports from some sectors say, okay, we can't do this because there's not going to be enough food around. And so Mao convened a conference in Lusan, like a resort, mountain resort, have all the top communist officials to attend to discuss how they're going to carry out the Great Leap Forward, right? Like to discuss including any potential problems. So the defense minister of China, Peng Dehuai, at the time, he did his own research and he realized Great Leap Forward wasn't working. So he wrote his own critique, like in a report sent to Mao. But this was bad timing because this coincided with what Khrushchev was doing in Soviet Union, which is de-Stalinization. Khrushchev denounced Stalin, and including for failures of collectivization and stuff like that. And Mao didn't like that. Mao thought Khrushchev was destroying the prestige of the Communist Party, because at that time, people have to realize Stalin was held in very high regard after World War II in many countries. And he was seen as like kind of this father figure for many communist parties all around the world. And Mao thought Khrushchev's de-Stalinization destroyed that image.
There's a bit of a commotion happening.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a bunch of people walking behind us. Some guy fell.
Okay.
And
Looks like that's
now-
a wedding party, actually.
And now I hear drums and music, and I have no idea if it's coming through in the microphone.
That sounds like a wedding party. And these guys looks like they might be groomsmen making wedding photos.
Wait, let's see if we can get it on the camera here.
There's going to be a Uyghur wedding, which is going to be lit. Because there's going to be dancing. Lots of dancing.
This back here.
And right now they're still drinking coffee, but
Yet another one. You've seen a few of them, haven't you?
cause, you know why? Because our tour guide told me wedding in Kashgar could take place for 3 days straight.
That's insane.
And
3 days.
And yesterday was China's National Day, which kicks off an 8 days China's National Week, like holiday, 8 days holidays. So a lot of people choose to have wedding right now. Oh, I see the bride now. I found the reflection. I saw the bride. So there's a lot of people choosing to have their weddings right now because it's a long vacation.
All right, let's get back to where you were.
So back in the 1950s, so when the defense minister Peng Dehuai sent his critique of Mao, Mao immediately thought about what Khrushchev was doing, and he was thinking this could happen in China. His own authority could be challenged, and so he publicized Peng Dehuai's report. He had many copies made and distributed to the rest of the Communist Politburo, and as a result, Peng Dehuai was the one who was criticized during the conference. So that suppressed any kind of dissenting voice, any opposition to the program of Great Leap Forward, and that led to, again, the continuation of the disastrous policies for the next 3 years. That led to tens of millions of people being affected.
How many people died?
We don't really know. Because back then, it's not like the government was doing census and tabulating the death. But what we did know is in the 1980s, there was a high communist rank official. I think he did a back of the envelope estimate. He said it could be as high as 30 million people that died because of the famine.
Okay, so
let me tell you a personal story.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
my home province of Sichuan was one of the hardest hit.
Which, by the way, makes, I think, my favorite meal here in China.
Sichuan is known to have very good food, very good cooking. But Sichuan is also known as a bread basket of China, kind of like what Ukraine was for the Tsarist Russia and Soviet Union. And now I'm quoting a Communist Party official obituary for the then governor of Sichuan, who was the governor during that time. It says the central government sent the orders to him that he needs to send food up out of the province. Because why? Because if they cannot afford to have people starve in city like Beijing or Shanghai. Everyone will know about it. It will be bad publicity. It will be big PR disaster if people in Beijing and Shanghai are dying. So that's why Sichuan, as a breadbasket, needs to send food. And it's also said everybody knew what the consequence that would be. Which
Wait. You're right. Here comes the bride.
My great grandma at that time, what she would do. As a result of the decree from the central government, all the surplus food from Sichuan was sent out of the province, and that led to not enough food for the farmers in Sichuan. And my great grandma at the time, she would try to conserve food. She would try to give all her portion to her only granddaughter at that time, which is my mom. My mom, yeah. So and because of that, because of malnutrition and not enough to eat, she fell sick and died. She fell ill and died.
That's terrible.
And that's the cause of the deaths for most people. It was because of malnutrition, not enough to eat, and they became susceptible to illness, and many of them became ill and died. And Sichuan was one of the most hardest hit province. And but we still don't know the exact number, but the governor at the time was one of the most hated person in the Sichuan province, because everybody knew he carried out the policy of sending out all the reserve grains from Sichuan out of the province. But when the Cultural Revolution come around, which we'll get to later, when the Cultural Revolution come around, a mob of people took his son and beat him half to death and tossed him into a furnace while he's still alive.
Gee.
And because there was so much hatred for what happened before.
Who was then responsible? Was it Mao?
Well, I think he bears responsibility because of his vision of China, moving China toward this path to utopia, and I think he had a sense of urgency because Mao felt he was not getting any younger, so he wanted to push China along this path towards the communist utopia that he imagined, which is, equality and abundance and all that. And that's why he had the slogan of surpassing UK in 15 years and US in 30 years in steel production. But I think he's not an economics expert, and in this instance, he committed a grave error, and he committed even a bigger error when he suppressed any dissent to his policy, when he had his defense minister arrested for voicing opposition, and that kind of effectively silenced any other channel of dissent, because they saw what happened to the defense minister that was arrested because his opposition, so nobody dared to speak up. And that led to the continuation of the policy for 2 more years, and that led to lot of unnatural death.
Then why is he so revered here in China?
Okay, so I'll get to that.
Okay.
But Mao's his legacy is not done, because of the Great Famine, Mao actually he took responsibility. He stepped down. He kind of went to semi-retirement. He led the day-to-day running of the country to his designated successor, Liu Shaoqi, and Liu Shaoqi's deputy, Deng Xiaoping. So Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping, when they came power, they said like, okay, let's let the farmers keep some land for themselves. Let them produce for themselves. Let them keep a portion of the produce for themselves. So I will encourage them to, farm again. And that worked. And then they allow some limited private enterprise. And in a way, that allowed the economy to recover. But then after 3 more years of that, by 1966, Mao gets the sense that he was kind of losing the control over the direction where the country is going. Because he wanted to push, again, he had this ideal of what China should be a more place with equality. And what he saw was with policies of Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping, he thought it was a reversion back to the old days of China when, he saw that free market economy will eventually lead to, different classes and exploitation and all that. He didn't want that. He thought that was a reversion. So that's why he launched the Great Cultural Revolution. One is to purge people like Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping from power. Deng Xiaoping was labeled as capitalist ruler, as saying he was trying to restore capitalism in China. And then so Deng Xiaoping got sent to the countryside to raise pigs. And to do that, because Mao did a coup, but in order to do that, Mao decided to use forces outside the government. He tried to get the students to rebel against authorities. He encouraged the students, college students particularly, to rebel against their authorities. And by authority, he means the whole communist bureaucracy. Because he thought, Mao is a kind of radical thinker. He thought all these the communist bureaucracy, which he helped build, he thought that was becoming like the new ruling elite of China, which is not in his vision. He didn't want like just to overthrow the emperor and the Mandarin class, just to replace them with another class, but call themselves communist, right? That's not his vision for future of China. So he wanted to destroy the entire communist bureaucracy, and to do that, he decided to incite all the college students to attack figures of authority, which included the bureaucrats in the government, like Deng Xiaoping and Liu Shaoqi. And that's how Cultural Revolution got started. And it was, to Mao's satisfaction, that he did kind of overthrow the government. But this is when a lot of other scores were settled. For example, I was telling you about the former governor of Sichuan who carried out the policies of sending grains out of Sichuan, right? That caused the famine, and some people now during Cultural Revolution took this opportunity to attack him and his family, and including killing his son in the process. And I remember I had a conversation with my mom, because my mom. So, obviously my mom does not like Cultural Revolution. But then he said something interesting. She said, if it wasn't for the Cultural Revolution, those communist officials would have never known what is it like to be at the end of struggle session, like what they did to others in 1956 when they did the anti-rightist campaign. There were other political campaigns before that. My grandpa was labeled as a rightist in the 1956 anti-rightist campaign, and my grandpa got sent to the labor camp. So my mom says, if it wasn't for the Cultural Revolution in 1956, those communist officials, would not have got a taste of their own medicine. What they did to.
So that was a positive.
This is like looking at the brighter side of things, like Monty Python when the Brian was nailed on the cross and they were singing, "Look on the bright side of life."
That's when you set the bar quite low.
Yes. Okay. Any questions?
Okay, so let me ask again.
Yeah.
Why then is Mao revered?
Right. But,
I mean, I know that it's controversial, but I've seen a lot of his pictures.
Yeah. So there's a famous communist official. I can't remember his name right now. And this is how he talked about Mao. He said, if Mao had died in 1949, right after he established the People's Republic of China, he will die a saint. Like he's kind of like a Nelson Mandela figure, but except like even more, right? And if he died after he had launched the anti-rightist campaign in 1956 and then launched the Great Leap Forward, no, he will still have died a hero, but a flawed, deeply flawed hero, right? If he died before 1966, before he launched Cultural Revolution, he would he would die like kind of he would die a great man, but with a very complex legacy. Well, unfortunately, Mao died in 1976. so I mean, at the time after Mao's death, there's actually a growing voice within the Communist Party of China to denounce Mao, like the way Khrushchev denounced Stalin, right? But Deng Xiaoping actually put a stop to that. He said, whoa, let's not get carried away, because Mao was so tied, his legacy is so closely intertwined with the Communist Party of China. If we denounce Mao, we're denouncing the party, So let's do this. Let's just say Mao made some mistakes, and he's 70% good and 30% bad. So that is the official line of the Communist Party. Mao is 70%, he done 70% good, 30% bad. I don't think those figures are exact, but it's a metaphorical speaking.
But I mean,
but let me get. I'm trying to address your question. So why is Mao revered? So today, the memory of famine and Cultural Revolution now is kind of fading memory, because those are memories carried on by my parents' generation. They lived through it. For them, it's still very vivid. Like my mom really hated it, right? So, but me, I'm born after Cultural Revolution. I'm born after Mao's death. So ever since I grew up, I've seen things getting better every day. So I mean, I understand the bad days of Cultural Revolution because I hear stories from my parents, my grandparents, but I didn't live it. For me, my experience is everything is getting better. And for my youngest cousin, who is 20 years younger than me, she grew up in a totally different world. I mean,
she only knows this massive growth.
Yes, she only knew the massive, because I still knew the poverty in 1980s. China was still poor, but she would have grown up when like China is already powerful
and the world's leading economy.
Right. So for these younger generation of people, they see Mao as the guy who unified China, who finally put the Chinese state back together after after the century of humiliation, after the invasions and after China was broken into pieces. It's Mao that put it back together. They kind of vaguely understand, Mao made some mistakes, but now they're looking this, and they do see this as Mao's legacy as well.
Is it though?
I would say yes. I mean, Mao might not like this. Mao would be shocked if he sees China today.
With all this capitalism going on.
With all these, I think Mao would think this is capitalism, but original aim of Mao was to make China strong and powerful. To that end, I think it happened. It already happened, but the thing is, I think most people are kind of result oriented, right? And because now China is a quite powerful position and is on its road to prosperity. Now people can look at the past and say, okay, well, yes, Mao made mistakes, but that was a long time ago, because they're not affected as much today. But did Mao build the basis for today? I would say yes, because I think obviously Great Leap Forward and Cultural Revolution are great setbacks. It was not necessary. It was just a big distraction. But it's despite those things. During Mao era, China had raised the literacy rate.
Yes, correct me if I have this wrong, but was it under Mao where they decided to change traditional Chinese to simplified Chinese?
They did. No, the original argument for that is to improve literacy. They say, well, okay, maybe one of the reasons only 10% of the people know how to read and write is because it takes too long. So they thought, okay, we'll simplify the characters. I mean, at the one time, they even thought about getting rid of the character altogether and go pure Latinization. I'm kind of glad that didn't happen. But
But I mean, can you understand traditional Chinese?
Yeah, I can, because I read it. Like, I think it's more difficult the other way around.
I mean, I've asked a few people here, and they can't read traditional Chinese.
Really? Okay, I could. So, for example, I'm trying to look around to see if there's example of traditional characters. So Jiang, the character for Xinjiang right here.
Let me turn the camera. Hold on. Let's see if we can zoom in there.
Right, Xinjiang. So the Jiang is written in traditional character.
Okay.
That's not a simplified character. Yeah. They just did that for
decoration.
So for people, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, I have no problem reading. I mean, it takes a little used to.
But the point is that the simplified Chinese potentially accelerated.
Well, I don't know about that, because Taiwan right now also has a pretty high literacy rate, but they never made the switch. Taiwan and Hong Kong both have pretty high literacy rate, and they still keep the traditional form. But the intention, yes, the intention was to promote literacy, to simplify the Chinese characters.
Not to propagandize the population necessarily.
I mean, education, right? So there's some argument education is propaganda. So.
But we also know that China's not very good at propaganda.
No, I don't think China is very good at propaganda. But what they did do is they improved literacy rate. So by the time Mao died, China already have very high literacy rate. Another thing is that they reduced infant mortality. So back in 1949, the life expectancy of a Chinese person at birth is 40 years old. Now, okay, that doesn't mean that everyone was average 40 years old. It actually means there's a high infant mortality rate. When you average together, it looks like that life expectancy is 40. So what Mao did was he promoted the so-called barefoot doctors, who had basic medical training, but he will send them to countryside to provide medical services to the farmers. Now countryside is where most of the people live, and that fact alone actually drastically reduced the infant mortality rate in China. That made the life expectancy to go up. So today, Chinese life expectancy today actually surpassed that of the United States. Yeah, but so there are some basis. The Mao era built the basis for the later economic takeoff, because by the time Deng Xiaoping decided to liberalize the economy, China already have a large literate population who are well educated, well trained. They're very cheap. Cheap labor, and this is one reason a lot of multinationals decide to move their operation from Southeast Asia to China, because here in China they can have high quality, educated labor at a very affordable price, and so so you can't say then just snap his finger and everything come into place. He built that from somewhere, and the base was the industrial base that was already built up during Mao China. So industrialization did happen in Mao era. So now that did train generation of workers in kind of technical know-hows to work in the factories, to work with machine tools. So by the time then throw the doors open for the foreign investors come in, you already have a literate labor force, and who are well trained. Yeah.
All right, dude, we got to go.
Okay.